Stand on a muddy hill above the winding Tiber River, and you are looking at the humble beginning of the most powerful empire in human history. In just 700 years, this small, forgotten village of shepherds would rule 3 continents, then finally collapse into ash and silence. This is the story of Rome, an empire built on iron discipline, brutal ambition, and stone roads that still exist 2,000 years later. It rose from crude mud huts to gleaming marble palaces, from a small handful of farmers to 60 million subjects stretched across the world. And then, slowly and painfully, it lost it all completely. Tonight we walk through the rise and the total ruin of the greatest empire in history. Legend says Rome was founded by 2 brothers, raised by a wolf. But the real story begins with desperate farmers fighting to survive on hills. By 509 BC, the Romans had overthrown their arrogant king and built something radical for the ancient world, a republic ruled by elected men. Senators wrapped in white togas debated endlessly in the forum, while young soldiers, called legionaries, trained hard in fields beyond the walls. Rome was not born powerful. It was born small, poor, and surrounded by enemies, and every early victory was bought with Roman blood and iron. Slowly and methodically, Rome absorbed all its neighbors, one Italian tribe at a time, offering citizenship instead of only bloody conquest. By 275 BC, the entire Italian Peninsula bowed before Rome, and the young republic finally looked out across the sea toward mighty Carthage. Carthage controlled key Mediterranean trade routes, and for over a century, 2 rising empires would fight to the death across land and sea. Hannibal Barca crossed the frozen Alps with war elephants, descending into Italy and slaughtering entire Roman armies at Cannae in 216 BC. Rome should have fallen that terrible day. Instead, it refused to surrender, rebuilding shattered legions again and again until Carthage broke. In 146 BC, Roman soldiers burned Carthage completely to the ground and salted its fields, ending the greatest rivalry the ancient world had seen. With its last true rival finally destroyed, Rome turned outward, conquering Greece, Spain, and the wealthy kingdoms of the eastern Mediterranean. But victory abroad brought a slow poison at home. Wealth, slaves, and power flooded into Rome, and the fragile republic began to rot from within. Ambitious generals grew far richer than the state, commanding massive private armies loyal to them personally instead of to the Senate in Rome. Julius Caesar conquered Gaul, then crossed the Rubicon River with his legions and marched on Rome itself, shattering centuries of sacred law. He became dictator, reformed the ancient calendar, and reshaped the city, but his power frightened the very senators who once loudly praised him. On the Ides of March in 44 BC, Caesar was stabbed 23 times by men he once called friends, dying alone at the foot of a marble statue. His death did not save the Republic. It only opened the door to a brutal civil war between his own chosen heir and his former closest allies. Octavian, Caesar's adopted son, crushed his rivals at the Battle of Actium and returned to Rome not as a general, but as its first true emperor. Renamed Augustus, he promised lasting peace after a century of bloodshed, and for 200 years, the Roman world mostly kept that promise. This was the Pax Romana, an age when a merchant could travel from Britain to Egypt on Roman roads without much fear of bandits, war, or delay. Rome itself swelled past 1 million people, fed by endless grain ships from Africa and entertained by brutal, bloody bloodsport in the Colosseum. Towering aqueducts carried fresh water for many miles across valleys and hills, giving ordinary Romans daily luxuries no city had offered before. In the public bathhouses, senators and shopkeepers soaked side by side, while beneath the streets vast sewers carried away the filth of empire. Emperors like Trajan pushed the borders to their absolute limit, and the empire reached a staggering size it would never again fully surpass. Roman engineers built roads so precise and durable that some are still walked on today, nearly 2,000 years after they were first laid. Concrete domes, like the one crowning the Pantheon, defied gravity itself and would not be matched in scale again for over 1,000 years. Legions marched 30 grueling miles a day, then built fortified camps every single night, a discipline no other ancient army could ever match. Trade flowed freely across the whole Mediterranean, proudly called Mare Nostrum, our sea, as spices, silk and slaves crossed its waters daily. But beneath this golden surface, cracks were already quietly forming, in the treasury, along the borders, and on the throne itself, unseen. Emperors increasingly inherited power through blood rather than merit, and while some proved brilliant, others were dangerously unstable men. Nero fiddled while his own dark ambition consumed him. Caligula terrorized the Senate, and the throne slowly became a prize worth killing for. The military, once fiercely loyal to Rome itself, grew loyal instead to whichever general paid the largest bribe, a shift that proved fatal later. Taxes climbed higher to pay for endless wars along the frontier, and the gap between the wealthy elite and the struggling poor grew ever wider. Grain shortages sparked violent riots in the crowded streets of Rome, while on the distant borders, tribes the Romans feared grew ever stronger. The empire had simply grown too vast for any single man to govern well, and cracks in its foundation could no longer be hidden away or denied. By the 3rd century, Rome faced total catastrophe. In 50 chaotic years, more than 20 men claimed the throne, most dying violently. Plague swept relentlessly through the empire, killing millions, while Germanic tribes and Persian armies pressed against every border at once. Emperor Diocletian tried desperately to save Rome by splitting it into east and west, hoping two rulers could manage what one man no longer could. Constantine later moved the capital far east to Constantinople, and slowly, the true heart of power drifted away from ancient Rome itself. The western half grew steadily poorer and weaker, increasingly dependent on the very barbarian tribes it had once proudly claimed to conquer. In 410 AD, the unthinkable finally happened. Visigoth warriors breached the walls and sacked Rome for the first time in 8 long centuries. The city that once ruled the entire known world now buried its dead in silence, its senators fleeing, its treasury and pride both left empty. For decades more, a shrinking Western empire clung desperately to survival, propped up by mercenaries loyal only to their next promised payment. In 476 AD, a Germanic commander named Odoacer quietly deposed the last Roman emperor, a mere teenager, without even bothering to kill him. No great battle marked the end, no dramatic final stand. Rome simply stopped existing, and the ancient world quietly closed its longest chapter. And yet, its roads still guide travelers, its laws still shape modern courts, and its language still lives inside half the words we speak today. If you want to see the next great empire rise and fall, subscribe now and tell us in the comments which lost civilization we should explore next.